On the drums, I got Mr. Ralph Rolle. Woo! On the bass guitar, and what a vocal, Mr. Jerry Barnes. And let's hear for the main man himself, the legendary Nile Rodgers.
Thank you.
And asking the questions, our very own Mr. Paul Lester. Let's hear it for him.
All right, Paul, turn around, bro. There you go. All right, there you go. It's the new camera. It's great.
Yeah. So if we could start this story at the end, which is in 2017, and your induction, well, your award for musical excellence at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in April. Is that the ultimate recognition at last for you? I mean, do you feel like that's the one you've been waiting for?
That is some serious bullshit.
Ralph and Jerry, what's it like to be in a band with the great Nile Rodgers?
I don't want to get emotional.
Do get emotional.
But Nile changed my life because there's not that many musicians that you get to play with. His rhythm guitar style is so unique and historic that, to sum it up, it's like playing with a record that you listened to as a kid, but it's really in your face. It's like a weird dream fantasy come true. I never thought I would play with him. 2017
isn't just the year that you get the award, but it's the 40th anniversary of your start as Chic.
But when you think about it, Chic as a band, what we accomplished was in just 2 short years. 2 short years. I mean, between 1977 and 1979. We're just talking about one little band doing, Jesus Christ, I Want Your Love, He's the Greatest Dancer, Dance, 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 We Are Family, Good Times, just because we never stop working. We just make records every day. It all happened rather quickly. We were a rock and roll band trying to figure out cool stuff to do. My girlfriend at the time loved this band called Roxy Music. So she says, you know, nah, let's go check out Roxy Music. And we could get like free drinks any place she went. So let's go. So we went to this joint called like the Roxy Theater, and the band was called Roxy Music. But Roxy Music got dressed up in beautiful couture clothing. And I had never seen that before. I was like, whoa. So I, as a musician, took this as a completely immersive artistic experience in rock and roll. And I was like, we got to do the black version of that. I called Bernard and said, man, I just saw some shit you won't believe. Rock dudes getting dressed up. They put on clean clothes to do a show. It was amazing. We got to do this. Because at that time, there was a movement in New York called the Buppy Movement, the Black Urban Professional Movement. And there were supermodels, and everybody was beautiful. So we started putting the band together, and the first person we hired was Tony Thompson. And then the second guy we hired was this guy named Rob Sabino. Rob Sabino's best friend was a dude named Ace Frehley. And Ace Frehley was in a band called Kiss. And they were doing all this dress-up stuff, too. So they didn't have a record deal. We didn't have a record deal. They were getting dressed up in their way. We were getting dressed up in our way. And all of a sudden, the Roxy, Kiss, Chic thing came together. We all had 4 letters in our name, all uppercase. Made perfect sense to us. And then the very first song I wrote was, so I had these hip jazz chords. And I realized that to make it cool, I had to do something sort of simple. So I just wrote. And then we would just sing something simple like, everybody dance, do-do-do-do, clap your hands, clap your hands. And there you go.
In the early days where record companies were a little bit perplexed and they didn't know what to do with this incredible new music. Did you experience some of that?
Record companies never know what to do. They're always perplexed because I'm not really beating up on them. But the thing is that when you're doing something new and you're trying to do something new, it takes a while for it to set in. It takes time for music to digest. When it comes to marketing music, they would always say that the most important thing with music is repetition, because the more people hear it, the more they start to understand it. And that's why everybody wants heavy rotation on the radio.
Work, 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 work. Work, 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 work. Work, 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 work.
Actually, talking of repetition, I think you told me once that you went to a club and they did play Everybody Dance about 20 times in a row.
Yeah, like about 90 minutes or so. It was like the greatest day of my life. When I wrote Everybody Dance, honestly, I had no money. We did the whole session for $10. Radio City, which is a big venue in New York, used to have 2 shows in the old days. So between shows, we ran to this session where my friend worked for free. He gave the guy, elevator operator, $10 to ferry us up and downstairs and not tell the boss. And we cut the record, and then we went back to Radio City. I never even had any money to get a copy of it. They didn't, man, I'm a fucking old guy. They didn't even make cassettes yet. So you couldn't even make a cassette to take home. You had to make an acetate, right, or a reel-to-reel. That was it. So I never heard Everybody Dance again until I went to his club and they were playing Everybody Dance. I went, that's my song they're playing. And the whole place went, like, play the bass line, Jerry. They would go. And the people went, ah! When I walked in, I went, woo! That's my song. That's my song. And honestly, they responded to that bass line like that. They were screaming, and I was like, that's my shit. And that was the first time I heard it outside of the studio that I recorded in. Absolute true story. The other day, I told someone for the first time, not for the first time, because I'm very honest about this, but I told him that Good Times was our homage to Hollywood Swingin'. And he looked at me and went, what? And I said, yeah, Hollywood Swingin', because so they think of all the intro and all that other shit. Dun, 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 dun. Not that fucking part. The part that goes boom, 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 doom, doom, doom. So we went doom, 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 boom, 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 boom. But we don't copy it. We fool with it.
Can you remember the moment that Bernard came out with that walking bass line?
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday. The truth is that we had tried to put a walking bass line over hundreds of songs. They just never worked before. Well, what happened was, by the time we got to Good Times, remember, Chic only lasted a couple of years. In those couple of years, we wound up going from being totally broke to having Ferraris, Maseratis, blah, 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 in no time at all. So it was quite common to be late to the studio. And Bernard was being later and later. He had balanced, you know, he had to balance 2 lives and stuff. So we were in the studio jamming, and Bernard was late. So by the time he walked in, we were already playing. Dun, 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 dun. But that was the first time he heard it. So it sounded cool to him. So he started imitating me, just going boom, boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. And I just screamed over Tony, who was playing loud as shit. He always played loud. I just went, walk, walk. He went, what? I said, walk, walk, motherfucker, walk. And he went, boom, 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 boom. So we were playing. Bernard jumped to the 4 chord, a 16th note before us. And we were like, whoa, what the fuck was that? It was like, it shocked everybody in the band because we were so oriented to the 1. The bass drum is doing this. Go ahead, Ralph, play with me. 3, 4. See, we're all one. Boom. And then now Jerry play it and show it. And I was like, whoa, that was so incredible. And it happened right on the spot. And I just screamed out to our engineer, Bob Clearmountain. I said, make it red, make it red. And we just had the simple little chart, and we just played it down one time. Boom, good times. Done.
Nile.
And what about David Bowie? We come to at the end of the interview. But was there a record that Bowie had heard of yours that particularly made him want to work with you?
So Billy and I, we walked into the club, and he goes, bloody hell, this is David fucking Bowie. Because that's how you guys used to pronounce his name. It was Bowie in the old days. He only changed it to Bowie later since we got so Americanized. But he was David Bowie. And Billy barfed when he went bow. He went, fucking bloody hell, that's David fucking Bowie. And then he pulled the coolest move ever. He went, how you doing, mate? And then David and I were engrossed in conversation all night. We just talked and talked and talked about jazz. And when we did Let's Dance, after Bowie and I were experimenting, going to this museum and that place with different record collections, he came to my apartment one day, true story, and he was holding something behind his back. And he goes, nah, darling, I want my record to sound like this. And it was a picture of Little Richard in a red suit with red hair hanging like down to there, getting into a red Cadillac convertible. I knew what he was saying. He wanted a record that wasn't retro, a record that looked like that picture. And that picture looked like it was from the future, even though you can tell the year of the Cadillac. And I got it. I says, oh, I dig. You want an evergreen record. That's the word, evergreen. I want it to sound like if a band made Let's Dance today, it would sound like a new record. And I got it. And then he comes to my room. I go to Switzerland, and he pulls this move on me after showing me that hit picture. Check this out. I love this. And I go, what do you call that? He goes, Let's Dance. I said, David, if I play that shit, I come from dance music. I said, I'd have to turn in my black union card, man. I can't do that. So I said, can I do an arrangement? So I did, instead of going, or whatever, I went. And I knew he was into jazz, and I went. That sounded cool to him. It sounded cool to me, but it wasn't right. It was like, so then I moved it up just a half step to, and it just got brighter. And that little bit of brightness, and then that, got cool as shit. And then I said, whoa, what if I put it up an octave? And I went. I got into the shit. And I got a stick going. And David was like, whoa. And I remember saying to him, this was awesome. I says, David, did I make it too funky? And he went, Nile, is there such a thing? And I just thought, man, you are the coolest motherfucker that has ever walked the planet Earth. That is the best answer ever. Can you ever be too funky? So David and I just happened to walk in the studio while Bob Clearmountain was just getting his delay time set up. And then he put that delay time that he had on the snare on the guitar. And it was like, And he wasn't thinking that the record was going to go like that. He was just timing it out. And I got fucked up. I was like, whoa. It wasn't like the funky thing that I was doing. I just went, and it ding, 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 and I was like, whoa. And it was like stereo panning and cyclo panning and doing all sorts of stuff. And Bowie and I flipped. And we just had the band play, and I played this simple thing. And we realized that it felt like we were making history. We actually knew it right on the spot.
You know, the Bowie album was big, the Madonna album was big. You'd had #1 hits with Good Times, you had huge hits with Le Freak. I can't think of many other artists, though, that 35 years later would have had their biggest ever hit, which is what you did in 2013 with Daft Punk's Get Lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how did the Robots get in touch, and what was the idea behind that?
Daft Punk called me, and they said, you know, Nile, we want to come up and play some demos for you. They came to my apartment, and they were like, we really think of this as our first studio album, because everything else was done in their bedroom. They asked me the magical question, how did you guys do Chic Records? That's all you had to ask me. I was like, turn all that other shit off and let me play by myself. Just give me the drums and let me play by myself. But that's just the simple part. That's just the basic. Then I wind up. And like all that kind of stuff. And then what Daft Punk did is they took every guitar track that I played, and when you listen to the album, they start pulling this one out and putting that one in and pulling this one out and pulling that one in. I played one song, and they were like, wow, that was great. Can you do that to this? And they gave me another song. I played that. Then they gave me a third song. They said, can you do that to this? I said, all right, motherfuckers, I got something to do. I got to go. I just had to go. I couldn't spend more time than that day. And I did 3 records, and all 3 of them made the album, Random Access Memories. And it's the first time I ever got a Grammy, and I got 3 in one night.
The serious moonlight. Come on now. Dance.